My cousin betrayed me over inheritance, threatening police action to steal my share. I fought back with a lawyer's letter, outsmarted her greed, and protected my family's legacy while rebuilding my life stronger than before. I'm Joshua, 28 years old, and I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. One where my own family turned against me over something as cold as money. It all boils down to inheritance, a word that sounds simple until it rips people apart. My cousin Ruby, who's 25, was like a little sister growing up. We'd race through Grandma's backyard, her old oak tree shading us as we dodged the sprinklers, or sit on her sagging porch eating popsicles that stained our shirts. Ruby's always been loud, quick to argue, and a little spoiled. Being the youngest in her family gave her that edge. But I never imagined she'd point that fiery streak at me, threatening to call the police if I didn't hand over part of my inheritance. It started when Grandpa died 4 months ago. He was the steady heartbeat of our family, a man who smelled of sawdust and tobacco, hands calloused from decades of farming and fixing anything that broke. He left behind a decent sum, money from selling his old equipment, a small house in town, and a quiet plot of land out in the country. His will was straightforward: split it 3 ways between his kids, my dad, Ruby's mom, and Uncle Adam. Dad's been gone 5 years, taken by a heart attack that still feels raw, so his share fell to me. Uncle Adam, 42, is the family's rock, tall, quiet, and practical, with no kids to split his portion. Ruby's mom, Aunt Cora, 45, is warm but weak-willed, always letting Ruby steer her. Cora and Ruby would divide their share however they decided. I figured we'd all just move on. Turns out, I didn't know my family as well as I thought. Ruby started poking at me about it a few weeks after the funeral. We'd be on the phone, her voice sharp through the crackling line, and she'd say things like, "So, Joshua, what are you doing with all that money?" I'd keep it vague, maybe patch up my duplex with its rattling windows and stained ceilings, save a bit, help Mom since she's been juggling bills on her own. My place isn't much, just a 1-bedroom with a couch that sags in the middle and a kitchen where the fridge hums too loud, but it's mine. Ruby's tone shifted over time, though. "You got a bigger piece than me," she'd snap. "I have to split mine with Mom, and you don't. That's not right." I'd shrug it off, thinking she was just being Ruby, over the top, like when she'd cry if I beat her at checkers as kids. Then came the night that broke everything open. It was a Tuesday, and I'd just gotten home from the shop where I work as a mechanic. My hands were black with grease, my back ached from wrestling a busted transmission, and all I wanted was to crash with a beer and the TV's low drone. My phone rang, cutting through the quiet, and Ruby's name glowed on the screen. I answered, expecting her to ramble about some new plan. She's always got one. Instead, she hit me with, "Joshua, I've been thinking hard about this. Grandpa wouldn't have wanted you to have more than me. I deserve part of your share, and if you don't give it to me, I'm calling the police." I laughed, thinking it was a bad joke. "The police? For what, Ruby?" Her voice dropped, cold and hard. "For stealing what's mine. You're sitting on Grandpa's money, and I'll tell them you messed with the will or hid something. I mean it." The call ended, and I stood there in my dim living room, the beer sweating in my hand, untouched. My cousin, the same one who'd cling to my arm during thunderstorms at Grandma's, wanted to turn me into a criminal over this. I couldn't sleep that night, the wind rattling my windows while I stared at the ceiling, replaying it all. The will was clean, handled by Mr. Harris, Grandpa's lawyer, a guy with a slow drawl and a handshake like iron. Ruby had no proof, but her words still clawed at me. I called Mom the next morning, pacing my kitchen where the coffee pot gurgled and the sink dripped. She's 55 now, her voice soft but steady, the kind that's pulled me through every rough patch since Dad left us. "She's greedy, Josh," Mom said. "Cora told me Ruby's obsessed with opening a boutique. Clothes, jewelry, all that. She's eyeing your money to fund it." That tracked. Ruby's wanted flashy things since we were kids. She'd beg for my candy at Halloween, saying I didn't need it all. But the police threat? That was new, and it scared me. I couldn't afford a fight, not with my bank account barely covering rent and Mom's meds. Then work threw me another punch. My boss, Mike, a burly guy with oil-stained overalls, pulled me aside at the shop. The garage was loud, wrenches clanging, engines revving, but his words cut through. "We're losing customers, Josh. I'm cutting hours unless you take less pay. I nodded, numb. The smell of gasoline thick in my nose. That job was my lifeline, paying for my drafty apartment, keeping Mom's prescriptions filled, even buying the cheap coffee I lived on. Now, with Ruby on one side and this on the other, I felt like I was sinking. I thought about caving, giving her some cash to shut her up, but every time I did, I remembered Dad's grin when he'd talk about that land. Our land. It wasn't hers to claim. I had to talk to her. We met at a coffee shop near her place, a squat building with foggy windows and the buzz of tired baristas. I got there early, sitting at a wobbly table, my coffee cooling as I waited. Ruby walked in, her jacket screaming red, her hair pulled tight, looking like she owned the room. I didn't waste time. Ruby, why are you doing this? We're family. You know I didn't cheat anyone. She sat, crossing her arms, her latte steaming between us. Family doesn't mean I watch you get more. Grandpa loved me just as much. I need that money, Joshua. My boutique could be everything, and you're just sitting on cash. I leaned in, voice low. I've got bills piling up. Mom's not okay, and my job's shaky. I'm not some rich guy here. She scoffed, flicking her hair. Sell the land then. You don't need it. That land, acres of grass and trees, a creek running through it, was Dad's dream. We'd camp there, him showing me how to build a fire, telling me one day we'd put a cabin up. No, I said, my jaw tight. She glared. Fine. I'm calling the cops tomorrow if you don't figure this out. Think hard. I drove home, my truck's headlights cutting through the dusk, my chest tight with anger. The streets were lined with tired houses, porch lights flickering, and I couldn't shake her words. She was delusional. The police wouldn't touch this. But what if she spun a lie? What if she dragged Mom into it, claiming I'd threatened her? I couldn't risk that, but I couldn't lose to her either. I needed a plan. Uncle Adam was my next call. I stood in my living room, the TV muted, pacing past the chipped paint on the walls. Adam's voice was calm, like he'd seen this coming. She's full of hot air, Josh. No cops wasting time on this. But she's bullheaded. You've got to be smarter. He suggested Mr. Harris. Get on it first, he said. Don't let her scare you. Adam's been my anchor before. When Dad died, he sat with me on that land, not saying much, just being there. I met Mr. Harris the next day. His office was a cluttered cave, shelves bowing under files, the air thick with dust and coffee. He listened, his gray eyes sharp behind smudged glasses, as I poured it out. Ruby, the job, the land. She's got nothing, he said, tapping a pen. Will's locked tight. Police'll laugh her off. I'll write her a letter. Formal, no nonsense. That might stop her. It was a clean move, not a brawl. He wrote it. My share's mine. Her threats are empty. I'll push back if she keeps going. I mailed it certified, picturing her signing with that scowl of hers. Days dragged after that. I threw myself into work, the shop's concrete floor cold under my boots, tools clattering as I tried to forget. Then Carson, my buddy since high school, showed up. He's 30, a welder with a grin that lights up rooms, and he flopped on my couch with a groan. Rent's jumping, man. I need a roommate, or I'm toast. You game. My place was cheap but lonely. Moving could save money, maybe ease the strain. I said yes, and we started hashing it out, joking about who'd cook better. A few days after sending the letter, I couldn't shake the weight of it all, so I decided to visit the land Grandpa left me. I drove out there on a Saturday morning, the road winding past fields of tall grass swaying in the breeze, the sky a pale blue streaked with clouds. When I got there, I parked my truck near the creek and just sat on the tailgate, listening to the water gurgle over the rocks. The air smelled clean, like earth and pine, and for a moment, I could almost hear Dad's voice, rough but warm, telling me how we'd frame the cabin right here, with a porch facing west for sunsets. I walked the property, my boots crunching on dry leaves, and found the old tree where Ruby and I carved our initials when we were kids, J and R, scratched deep in the bark. Seeing it made my chest ache. How had we gone from that to this? Back home, I got a call from Adeline, my old high school girlfriend who's still a friend when I need one. She's 27, sharp-witted and kind, with a voice that always calms me down. Carson told me what's going on with Ruby, she said, her tone soft but firm. You okay? I spilled it all. Ruby's threats, the job scare, the letter. While she listened, the phone pressed hard against my ear. You're doing the right thing, Josh, she said. She's pushing you. But you're not the bad guy here. Don't let her make you feel like one. We talked for an hour, her words pulling me out of the fog, and she even laughed about how Ruby once tried to sell her a business idea in school, a lemonade stand with glitter in it. It felt good to remember Ruby as she was, not just the version tearing me apart now. Then came Cora's dinner invite. "Let's fix this," she said, her voice wobbly. I didn't want to go. Facing Ruby sounded like torture, but Mom insisted. "We're still family, Josh." So we went. Me, Mom, Adam, Cora, Ruby, and Carson for backup. Cora's house was warm, the kitchen glowing with the smell of chicken and gravy, but the mood was ice. Ruby sat across from me, her plate barely touched, her eyes anywhere but mine. Cora chattered about nothing, rain, groceries, until Ruby snapped. "I got your letter, Joshua. Think you're so slick." I set my fork down steady. "I want this done, Ruby. Grandpa wouldn't want us like this." She laughed, bitter. "You're the one making it ugly, keeping my share." Adam cut in hard. "It's over, Ruby. You're lucky he's not suing you." Cora flinched, and Ruby's face went scarlet. "You all hate me," she shouted, bolting out, the door banging shut. Cora teared up, mumbling apologies. She's desperate. I didn't see it getting this bad. Mom held my hand, whispering, "You're fine, Josh." Ruby faded out after that. Adam said she's working at a store now, her boutique dream on hold. My life steadied. Mike got a big contract. My hours came back. I moved with Carson. Our new place has a porch where we grill, the air thick with smoke and laughs. I fixed Mom's roof, the rain finally staying out, and banked the rest. That land's still mine. I can feel Dad there, hear his voice in the wind. Looking back, I'm grateful. Ruby's gone quiet, and I'm stronger for it. Better job, better home, Mom's safe. But I wonder, what would you do? Was the letter my best shot? Or should I have faced her more? Should I call her now? Or let it lie? Tell me what you think. What's the sharpest way I could have played this?
Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our daily updates.